Seattle. November. The rain was relentless. Sheets of rain pelted down onto 3rd Avenue like a murky veil, blurring bodies and shadows alike. The water gathered into streams, carrying away trash and memories cold as the sentence just pronounced inside King County Court. Adrian Morrow stood motionless on the gray stone steps, his white shirt soaked and clinging to his chest like a slap in the face, a brutal reminder. He had lost everything. The newspapers called it the greatest free fall in tech of the decade. The brilliant Franco-American CEO once compared to Musk and Jobs was now just a drenched shadow of himself. He carried no umbrella. Not out of pride, but because there was nothing left worth protecting. No reputation. No company. No patents. No home. And, most importantly, no one. A taxi sped past, spraying the sidewalk and soaking the sneakers he'd been wearing for 3 weeks straight. Adrian stepped off the landing, walking slowly toward a narrow alley, the path to the Union shelter, the last place he was still allowed to spend the night. Dinner would be watery mushroom soup, served without a metal spoon. He turned into the alley, head bowed. But as he passed the collapsed awning of an abandoned drugstore, his eyes caught something and stopped. Beneath the cracked plastic roofing, a girl, maybe 9 years old, was crouched on the wet cement. She wore an oversized hoodie. No shoes. Matted brown hair clung to her cheeks. But in her hand was a piece of white chalk, tracing on the damp pavement. Del T psi equals IH delta psi plus V psi. Then followed a string of symbols, sigma, lambda, differential expressions. A quantum equation. Complex. Precise. Not a child's game. Adrian froze, pulled in by the string of numbers. Those symbols, he had seen them, written them, lived them night after night in his Stanford lab. And now here they were, scrawled on dirty pavement by an unknown child. He looked around. Passers-by moved on as if the girl were invisible. A woman tossed a coin toward her without turning her head. The girl didn't look up. She just kept writing, then erasing, then writing again. Rhythmic. Clear. Purposeful. Adrian stepped closer, crouching gently so as not to startle her. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low but soft. She paused, turned to face him. Her eyes were a strange shade of gray-green. Deep. Unusual. "Trying to make the screaming stop," she said. Barely above a whisper. Adrian froze. Not because of her answer, but because her voice held no fear. It sounded like something she'd said to herself many times. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his tone careful, calm. "Lena." Just one word. No last name. No question in return. Adrian glanced again at the equations, then at her bare feet, red and raw against the cold stone. He saw himself in her. A boy once crouched in a shelter on the outskirts of Marseille, writing code on a broken computer while his father slept off another night of drink. No one to ask. No one to trust. A harsh voice rang out. "No drawing here." A security guard from the nearby bank approached, eyes narrowing with irritation. Lena said nothing. She quietly picked up her chalk and tucked it into a torn Ziploc bag. No protest. No pleading. Adrian stood, instinctively stepping between them. "She's with me." The guard hesitated, perhaps recognizing the man once on Forbes' cover. But after a moment's pause, he simply shrugged and turned away. Lena started walking. No waiting. No thank you. Just left. Adrian followed, the two of them walking in silence for a few hundred meters through the rain. "Where do you stay?" he asked. She shrugged. "Where they can't hear me." Adrian asked no more. He understood. It hurt too much to be heard. They stopped at a crosswalk. The red light reflected on the wet asphalt like a spreading bloodstain. "I'm Adrian," he said softly, like a final introduction. "I'll be here again tomorrow. There'll be hot cocoa." Lena didn't answer. But before turning to go, she gave him a look, an encoded glance. Not acceptance. Not rejection. Just remembrance. And then she vanished into the rain as quietly as an equation with no solution in real space. At that moment, Adrian didn't know. He had just met the one person who might pull him back from the edge, a strange girl with a mind beyond her years and wounds no one could see. And he, a man once lecturing on ethics at TED Talks, was about to relearn the meaning of courage. Not on a stage, but on a damp sidewalk beside a child the world had left behind. There are nights without dreams. Only existence, persistent, silent, and cold. Inside the Union shelter, the scent of diluted chlorine mingled with dampness and the old linoleum flooring. Fluorescent lights flickered on the ceiling, producing a faint clicking sound like needles pressing into exhaustion. Adrian Morrow lay on the bottom bunk, his back aching, hands clasped behind his head. The ceiling was less than half a meter above his face, but his mind was light years away. Every night here felt like a silent trial where he judged himself with memories. You should have stopped. You shouldn't have trusted Victor. You should have. He turned over and looked toward the single narrow window in the dormitory. The rain hadn't stopped. A faint sigh echoed from the bed to his left. Someone was crying silently. Adrian didn't look. Here, pain was part of the ambient noise, like the fan or the scurrying of rats. The next morning, he woke earlier than usual. His knees throbbed dully. He stepped into the hallway holding 2 cheap cups of coffee, one with just a bit of sugar left. He walked to the street corner where he had met Lena. Stood there. Waited. She didn't come. He went back. On the second day, he returned. It was colder. His hands trembled slightly. Still no sign of her. On the third day, he decided to wait longer. The rain had stopped. The pavement was still wet, reflecting the morning lights like shattered glass. And then, from behind a trash bin, a small figure emerged. An old hoodie. A crumpled package of cookies in hand. The same pale gray eyes, uneasy, unsurprised. Lena stood about 3 meters away. You're still here, she said, not as a question, just a statement. Adrian held out the coffee cup. I brought an extra. Lena walked over, sniffed it, took a small sip. Not bad, she murmured. Adrian laughed softly, the first laugh in weeks. No poison, he said. Lena looked at him blankly. You're a terrible liar. Adrian laughed again. True. They sat on the steps. No words. No questions. Only presence, enough to start healing. Gradually, every morning became a ritual. Adrian brought coffee. Lena came on time. She drew. He watched. No explanations. Lena never spoke of her past, but Adrian pieced it together from how she avoided adults, stayed alert around cops, and always hid her scribbled notes in the lining of her coat pocket. One day, Adrian asked, Do you like learning? Lena looked up. Learning what? Anything. She was silent for a moment. The things no one teaches. That afternoon, Adrian returned to the shelter with a decision. He unlocked his old phone and visited the Washington state government website, the temporary guardianship application section. He knew he had no home, no job, no credibility. But he had a reason. A child was vanishing off the map of life. 3 days later, he scheduled a meeting with a social worker at the county office, Ms. Karen Muller, a woman with gray hair, a thick coat, and eyes too tired to believe in miracles. Mr. Moreau, she began, her voice flat. You're applying for guardianship of a minor. You're currently unemployed, without permanent housing, and under financial review following litigation. Adrian lifted his head, eyes steady. Yes. But the girl, Lena, she has no one. I'm not asking for help. I'm asking for a chance. Karen flipped through the file. The girl has no birth certificate. No registered address. No legal guardians listed. Legally, she doesn't exist. So we're letting a genius sleep on the street because no one can register her birth? Karen paused. Looked at him. Do you have proof? Of genius. Adrian pulled out a stack of crumpled papers, photos of chalk sketches on sidewalks, a page of advanced calculus Lena had left behind the day before. Karen glanced through them. Frowned. Could be forged. Adrian froze. That phrase, it had been said to him when he was 14. He didn't argue. Just quietly gathered the papers. Before leaving, he said, if that girl disappears, it'll be because we chose not to believe, not because we couldn't. That night, Lena didn't come to the corner. Adrian searched 3 blocks, calling her name in a whisper like a prayer. He returned to the shelter, shoulders heavier than ever. Then, a soft knock at the dining room window. Adrian jumped to his feet. A small figure under the yellow light, soaked with rain. Holding a paper bag. Lena. A woman asked for my name, she said. I didn't answer. Thank you for coming, Adrian whispered. I came because you still did, she replied. That night, for the first time, Adrian slept peacefully. Not because life had gotten easier, but because he was no longer alone. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't being seen, but being looked at without ever being truly seen. Seattle, Central District School Office. A Tuesday morning. Adrian had prepared himself for rejection. He had prepared for skeptical looks, for cold indifference. But nothing could prepare him for the feeling of leading a rare creature into a veterinary inspection cage. Lena sat beside him in the waiting room. The chair was far too big for her small frame. Her arms clutched a worn fabric backpack containing notebooks, pencils, and a bundle of printouts from the public library. Adrian turned to her. Just be yourself. Being myself doesn't really work, she muttered, eyes fixed on the floor. A woman in a black suit stepped out. Mr. Moreau and Lena Kovacs? Adrian nodded. Yes. We're here to request an exceptional ability evaluation. She led them into a small meeting room where another woman was waiting, hair neatly tied, brown-rimmed glasses, and a permanently tired professional smile. Dr. Linda Packer, director of the Special Talent Assessment Program. In the first 10 minutes, Dr. Packer flipped through a file that essentially held nothing. No birth certificate. No academic records. No legal guardian. We can't proceed, she concluded. The system requires basic identification before any assessment can be considered. Adrian remained calm. Give her a simple test. IQ, logic, anything. I just need a baseline. Dr. Packer crossed her arms. We have procedures, Mr. Morrow. And we've seen many. Prodigies orchestrated by overly hopeful guardians. Adrian exhaled, swallowing the anger rising in his chest. He reached into his bag and pulled out Lena's notebook. Crumpled pages, bent corners, duct-taped cover, but inside, the handwriting contained an entire universe. Parallel datastream encryption systems. Energy schematics simulating compressed time measurement devices. Self-symmetric quantum logic sequences. Packer glanced briefly, her expression unchanged. Children can copy. AI can generate this sort of thing. Adrian clenched his fists. Let her solve a problem, right here, right now. Lena said nothing. Didn't look up. Didn't speak. Packer closed the notebook. I don't make decisions on impressions. I follow the law. Outside the building, Adrian wanted to scream. Lena walked beside him, silent. A long time passed before she finally spoke. She thinks I'm pretending. Everyone always does. Adrian turned. You're not pretending. No, but I'm not like them either. And that makes me not exist. That night, Adrian sat at the shelter, a newly bought notebook beside him. He began writing, line by line, a plan to reboot everything. They wouldn't see Lena if they didn't want to. He needed proof no one could deny. Not sentiment. Not instinct. Not goodwill. Irrefutable evidence. The next day, Adrian visited the public library looking for a way to share data without revealing Lena's identity. Then it struck him, Reddit. Broad, fast, and hard to moderate. He created an anonymous account and posted to Math Overflow and Cognitive Anomalies. Just one note. This is a set of problems solved by a homeless girl. No AI. No actors. Can anyone verify the content? Attached, photos of 3 pages from Lena's notebook. Within hours, comments flooded in. No way. This is 4D spatial physics. If real, the thinker behind this has a non-linear cognition that's totally alien. Either a brilliant hoax or something we've never seen before. One reply came from a.mit.edu email. I want to speak privately. I think I know this cognitive pattern. Adrian felt his blood ignite with hope. But hope never lasts long. 2 days later, a tech blog published an article. Genius or emotional hoax? The truth behind the sidewalk equations. It reused the Reddit images, speculated that the child may be a constructed persona, and hinted that Adrian was a failed CEO trying to rebuild his public image. Adrian finished reading Hollow. Not for himself, but because he knew Lena would find out. And he was right. That night, she didn't show up at their usual spot. She didn't respond to any messages, she didn't have a phone, but he always wrote in case she returned. The next morning, when Adrian anxiously returned, she was already there. Not drawing. Not speaking. Just sitting. He approached. She didn't look at him. Just said, "We can't win. They don't want to understand me." Adrian sat beside her. Cold. Wind blowing. Silence. He said, "Someone once believed in me when no one else did. If I don't do that for you now, I've forgotten who I am." Lena stared ahead, eyes dry. "Do you think they'll ever give me a chance?" Adrian nodded. "No, but I will." And in that moment, a new plan began to form. Adrian would stop asking for permission. He would build a stage the world couldn't ignore. Not through a window, but by breaking every door that had ever shut Lena out. Seattle kept raining as if time itself refused to move. In the days after the article, Adrian lived between silence and the steady beat of broken clock rainfall. Each morning, he brought coffee to the meeting spot. Each night, he returned to the shelter with an empty backpack except for Lena's notebook. The one thing reminding him what he saw was real. At 1:14 a.m., a message arrived. No name, no signature. Just 6 words. Still in touch with the monster? He didn't have to guess. Only one person had ever called Victor Stein that and survived. Sophia Rossi, the only woman from Signacore who had stood against Victor and walked away before the company collapsed. He replied with 4 words. I need to meet. They met at a cafe wedged between a used bookstore and a sewing repair shop. Sophia arrived 10 minutes late carrying 2 espressos and the gaze of someone who had once abandoned their conscience just to survive. "Still trying to be a good man, Adrian?" she asked. He didn't answer, just handed her a copy of Lena's notebook. The pages were gray, wrinkled, but inside was a maze, chaotic, structured, and clearly not of this world. Sophia flipped through a few pages, then stopped. "This isn't conventional math. This is model logic with endogenous syntax." She looked up. "Do you know what that means?" "It's real," Adrian replied. "I watched her write it." Sophia didn't smile. "Do you know what Victor's doing now?" After Signacore fell, he didn't disappear. He rebranded. He's funding independent research institutes, places outside the reach of child protection laws. He sponsors genius incubators that are really strategic labs. If you post more of this online, he'll see it. Adrian gripped his coffee cup. "So what do I do? Hide her forever?" "No. You need proof. The world can't ignore proof from someone the system still respects." Sophia paused. Felix Weber, ETH Zurich, nearly won the Fields Medal until Victor pulled his funding for failing to monetize ideas. If he confirms Lena, no one can dismiss it. Adrian nodded. "Send it to him." When he returned to the shelter, Lena was already there. Sitting under the stairs, eyes empty. She didn't ask. Didn't need to. "What do they think?" she asked, more to herself. "They're afraid of you," Adrian replied. She smiled faintly. "Not with joy. I'm not a nuclear bomb." "No. You're more dangerous. You understand how things work." "So did my father," she whispered. "And they called him mad." She said no more. Just handed Adrian another notebook, older, different. Not math, but the world. Logic diagrams modeling emotion as waveform. Sound translated into prime number chains. And a single line in the center. "If the world is an equation, I want to break the final variable." She didn't need him to read it now. She only needed to place it in the hands of the one person she was trying to trust. 3 days later, Felix Weber replied. "This isn't genius. This is nonlinear cognition. I want to meet her." Adrian began to smile. Then came the second article. No doubt. No mockery. An investigation. They called him a disgraced CEO manipulating public image with a child. And this time, Lena's photo was leaked, her face not clear, but enough for anyone who had seen her to recognize. She didn't show up that day. Adrian searched 3 neighborhoods. When he returned to the old cafe in Ballard, she was there. Not crying. Just sitting. "They saw me," she said. Adrian sat beside her, shivering in the night wind. "I won't let them take you." "You think you can stop them?" "I don't know. But I won't walk away." "Then listen carefully." She pulled a folded sheet from her backpack. On it, a code, a program designed based on logical deviation chains. "If they take me, upload this to their system. It doesn't destroy. It disrupts. It makes their AI unsure of itself." "Why?" "Because I don't want them to understand me. I want them to fear not understanding." Adrian looked at her for a long time. For the first time, he realized Lena wasn't just running. She was choosing her place on the board. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat by the shelter's tiny window watching the rain fall, Lena's notebook on his lap, and understood. She wasn't a child in need of saving. She was someone who had seen the structure of the world and was rewriting it. With chalk, with rainwater, and with numbers no one ever taught her. The message came at 2:03 a.m. A single line from Sophia. "You need to leave Seattle. Immediately." Adrian read the words on his old phone screen again and again. Rain still fell beyond the shelter's window. Inside, the heavy breathing of dozens of strangers merged into the hum of a dying city's ventilator. Lena lay curled up 3 meters away, the thin blanket pulled up to her chin, arms wrapped around her worn fabric backpack. She slept lightly, as if a single wrong number could wake her. Sophia called. Her voice was hoarse over the encrypted line. "Victor saw the code. You sent Weber the original, didn't you?" "Yes. But I used an encrypted network." "Doesn't matter. They don't need to know who you are, just who's creating something they can't control." Adrian tightened his grip on the phone. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough for a proper plan," Sophia said. "I'm sending you an address. An old storage facility, south end of the city. Off the radar for now. You have 24 hours. Lena didn't ask questions when he woke her. She just blinked, put on another layer, and followed. No words. No fear. As if she'd always known, silence was only the breath between 2 runs. By sunrise, they had reached an abandoned warehouse near the old train yard. High ceilings, light leaking through cracked brickwork, dust so thick each step sounded like ash. Lena sat on the ground, unpacked her bag, took out her notebook and a worn-down pencil. Adrian lit the lantern. "We'll stay here for a while." "No one really stays anywhere," she said, eyes fixed on the page. Meanwhile, on the news platforms, a familiar name resurfaced after nearly 2 years of silence. Victor Stein. They called him the data architect of the fourth era, the man who sees the world as probability chains. In a brief CNBC interview, he appeared in a graphite suit, smile thin as wire. "Technology should serve stability," he said. "Genius? That's an asset that must be guided." No one knew who he was referring to. But Adrian did. Sophia did too. She sent Adrian a leaked audio file from the Ashcroft Institute, where Victor now funded cognitive enhancement research. The clip was from a meeting. A deep, cold voice spoke. "The code sample indicates a divergent cognitive tendency. If harnessed, it could build a system unpredictable from the outside." "Risk?" someone asked. "The only risk is letting it remain outside control." Adrian recognized the voice. Victor. And he wasn't talking about a concept. He was talking about Lena. That night, Adrian told Lena everything about Victor, about Ashcroft, about how they were being watched. Lena listened, unblinking. "When you say watched, what do you think they see?" "You. Your code. How you think?" "Then they haven't seen anything at all." She opened her notebook, turned to a page halfway through. A diagram, dense, tangled, nearly impossible to decode at a glance. But Adrian knew this was the core of what she had whispered since the beginning. "What is this?" "Disobey." Adrian looked at her. "Malfunction code?" "No. Recognition code." "Recognition of what?" "System error." She continued. "If they want to build systems by learning from me, then I'll teach them how to learn until they're no longer sure what they're learning at all." Adrian shivered. Not from fear, but from awe mixed with a vague ache. A child should never have to understand the world this way. The next morning, as he prepared coffee from Sophia's old tin pot, Adrian heard something outside the warehouse door. Not footsteps. Not an engine. Just silence changing shape. As if the air itself sensed they were being watched. He signaled to Lena to stay quiet. She nodded. Seconds later, a soft knock at the back door, then nothing. Adrian pulled out a small knife from his pocket. He knew, if anyone crossed that threshold, no one was a side character anymore. They'd entered the game's most dangerous chapter. A message from Sophia came in at that moment. Victor's team just issued a trace order, extraneous entity with algorithmic interference potential. Red alert on the internal network. Lena is no longer anonymous. Adrian put down the phone. Turned to Lena. She was writing something on the warehouse wall with a piece of chalk Sophia had left behind. A single line. "They want to understand me, but they can't." Then she turned and asked, "So, what do we do now?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "We make sure you don't become part of their system. We start breaking it from the inside." And that night, Project Disobey officially began. We're not trapped by walls. We're trapped by the way others see. Wednesday morning. The rain had stopped, but the air hung heavy like unburned steam. Adrian woke to the alarm on his old phone. A message from Sophia. "Emergency protocol, Victor has activated provisional academic guardianship. Lena will be subject to mandatory assisted access. Legal. They'll come today." He looked around the warehouse, panic blooming like walls closing in. Lena was still asleep. Her hands wrapped around her notebook. Eyelids twitching, dreamless. Adrian didn't wake her yet. He sat beside her. For the first time, he was afraid, not for himself, but because he finally realized he might not be fast enough to stop what was coming. They didn't arrive like police. No sirens. No battering rams. They arrived like researchers. 3 people in dark suits carrying legal documents from the Ashcroft Institute. Official papers bearing the seal of the state of Washington. Signed by Karen Muller, the same social worker who had once refused Adrian at the county office. He shouted, "You knew. You knew she shouldn't be taken." Karen stood, eyes avoiding his. "This is a cognitive safety protocol for an unverified minor with exceptional potential. It's not an arrest." "Do you have children?" Adrian asked. Karen said nothing. But her face twitched. Lena didn't resist. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. She only asked. "How long?" "Just an initial evaluation," one of the men replied. "To ensure you receive the right support." Lena nodded. But when she turned to Adrian, there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, doubt. The Ashcroft Institute lay on Seattle's northern edge, a blend of lab, library, and orbital station. No windows. Only glass. And the eyes behind that glass. Lena was taken to Evaluation Room 14A. No desk. No toys. Just a digital interface board. A small chair. And dozens of visible cameras. The session lead was Dr. Holden Breck, renowned cognitive psychologist and one of Victor's quiet enforcers. Lena, he said, voice soft as a lullaby, we just want to understand you better. You can start by drawing anything you like on the board. She said nothing. She didn't draw. He waited. 10 minutes. Then presented a problem. Find the optimal flow solution for a non-sequential interactive system with active error margins. Lena read it. No response. He continued. We're told you've created similar expressions before. Is that correct? Lena tilted her head. Her eyes drifted over the board without fear, without curiosity. Only deliberate emptiness. Behind the one-way glass, Victor Stein stood with arms crossed. No lab coat. Just the same black suit. Beside him, an assistant held a tablet, eyes locked on Lena's neural response graph. No surprise, Victor said. She's been taught to mask herself. Not taught, the assistant replied. Self-learned. Brainwave spikes only drop during direct eye contact. System evasion response, Victor nodded. Either defiance or preparation. Adrian wasn't allowed into the institute. But Sophia had a way in. She contacted a former technician, Mikkel Larsen, once with Signacor, now part of Ashcroft's maintenance crew. They met in an abandoned parking garage. You owe Adrian a way in, Sophia said. You once believed Signacor would make the world better. Time to prove it. Mikkel nodded. I need 48 hours. You have 24. That night, Lena was fed in her private room. A plate of white rice, a boiled egg, a glass of water. She didn't eat. She opened her bag, the one thing they'd let her keep, and pulled out a thin notebook. No one saw what she wrote, until the next morning when a janitor discovered a line scrawled on the whiteboard wall. I will not explain myself to a system that doesn't know how to listen. Adrian received the photo through an encrypted channel. Sophia included a single message. It's starting. He stared at the words. Then out the warehouse window. Rain again. But this time no sound. Only the hush before the storm. Inside Ashcroft, in a soundproof conference room shielded from all outside networks, Victor addressed his surveillance team. Change strategy. No more questions. No more commands. Make her believe she's being understood. Then we'll persuade the final variable. But Victor had forgotten one thing. The girl was no longer an equation to be solved. She had become a variable that refused to be found. Not all systems collapse from force. Some crack open from just one point at the right time in the right place. At 3:17 a.m., the screen inside Ashcroft's control room glowed faintly. Within the feedback monitoring stream, an anomaly appeared, a 17-bit character string embedded in the low-alpha wave activity of subject LK #A14. Lena, one of the security engineers, squinted at the screen. Glitch code. No. This pattern has internal logic. Self-generated. Random. Strangely, it doesn't repeat. But it's not chaotic either. They didn't know it yet, but Lena was transmitting a signal. Not through Wi-Fi. Not through a network. Through thought rhythm. At an old data depot in West Seattle, Adrian, Sophia, and Mikkel sat around a plastic table covered in maps and Ashcroft's architectural schematics. On the wall were photos of control panels, door access QR codes, and a picture of Lena staring through frosted glass, her eyes cutting through surveillance cameras like a blade. Sophia pointed to the sublevel blueprint. This is the auxiliary personnel path. Mikkel, you said your old tech badge still works. It does, Mikkel nodded, but only if the overnight reset hasn't wiped it. I need time to sync it with the legacy access node. How long do we have? Adrian asked. 72 hours max, Sophia said. After that, they'll move Lena to the parameterization phase. Which means they'll begin biological integration, Mikkel said. Could be brainwave monitoring chips? Or worse, feedback implants. Adrian stood, pushing his chair back, hands trembling slightly. They're going to implant hardware into a child's brain? They don't call it that, Sophia muttered. They call it adaptive learning enhancement. And it's backed by the Civilian Technology Commission. Silence settled over the room. No one asked why Victor had that kind of power. They all knew he didn't wait for authority. He bought it. In room 14A, Lena still sat on the floor. She no longer wrote. She counted. With her fingers. With the tiny click of the light bulb. With the rhythm of footsteps outside. 1, 2, 3, 7, 14. Everything had patterns. And every pattern had a breakpoint. When Dr. Holden Breck entered, a plastic smile stretched across his face, Lena knew. Today, they were changing their approach. Lena, he said gently, we believe it's time for you to share your feelings. Not problems. Not models. Just you. She looked at him like one might look at a machine pretending to be human. Share for what? She asked. Holden froze for a moment. To be understood, he said. Lena stood up for the first time in days. She looked straight into the camera. Not everyone wants to be understood. Some just want to be left alone. Adrian decided not to wait until nightfall. They split into 3 teams. Sophia generated a fake Ashcroft data leak on social media to distract the legal division. Mikkel exploited a login vulnerability from an old maintenance access point. His badge would grant entry for exactly 42 seconds between update cycles. Adrian had the most dangerous role, infiltrate the lower floor to extract Lena's biometric control record, the only file that could remove her designation as research property. They began at 2:07 p.m., the exact time Ashcroft had scheduled a mock internal security drill. One window. One chance. Lena felt something shift. Not voices. Not footsteps. A rhythm in the wall, a foreign rhythm. One that didn't belong to them. Adrian was coming. She stood up, walked toward the digital board, and for the first time in days she wrote. But not equations. A sentence. I am not a tool. I am the breaking point of this system. Sublevel. Adrian slipped into the data vault, guided by Sophia's voice in his earpiece. Mikkel held the door. Sophia jammed the static scans. The door opened. In Adrian's hands was a cold, heavy hard drive, its green light pulsing like a shark's eye. He knew, if he pulled this, Ashcroft's system would lose its biometric lock on Lena for exactly 83 seconds. Only 83. He checked his watch, breathed in, and pulled. Upstairs, in room 14A, the interactive board went dark. Lena stepped to the center of the room, looked into the camera, and said clearly, "Until I no longer have a name in your system, no data about me will be accurate." The command room shook. Screens blinked. Alarms lit red. Sublevel breach, a technician shouted. Drive 04A has been removed. Adrian ran. Mikkel sealed the door. Sophia triggered the fake broadcast, a deepfake audio of Victor's voice stating legal ownership of exceptional cognitive entities. Instant chaos. Outside, lawyers, reporters, and auditors were already at Ashcroft's gates. Within 40 minutes, the story had escaped its cage. That night, in a dark room beneath the southern pier, Lena looked at Adrian, his face still dust-streaked, sweat not yet dry, and said, "I thought you wouldn't come." "I thought I wasn't good enough," Adrian replied. "But you came." Adrian nodded. And for the first time, Lena leaned her head against his shoulder, saying nothing. Silence. Not out of fear, but because at last, she could breathe like a free human being.